Hey, hi everyone. I'm going to show you how to make a pumpkin pie. It's the one I make every Thanksgiving. Let's just get down to it. So I have here my pie crust, which I already made obviously and baked because this is a custard-based pie, and if you don't pre-bake the crust, it's going to be a soggy bottom, and nobody wants that. So just very quickly, I'm going to give you the recipe for the pie crust. If you go on my Instagram page, Meals at Neil's, I have a video of the entire crust making recipe and technique. But it is 2 3/4 cups of all-purpose or plain flour, a tablespoon of sugar, a teaspoon and a half of salt, and you put that in a food processor, whiz it around to combine. You take 2 sticks plus 2 tablespoons of cold butter, cut it up into cubes, make sure it's very cold. In fact, I would stick it in the freezer for a few minutes before making the crust. Once it's cold, add it to the food processor, pulse it for no more than 30 seconds. You're trying to get crumbly bits the size of peas. You don't want it any finer than that. Once you're at that stage, you add, I would say no more than 7 tablespoons of ice water. Once you've added that, process it for no more than 30 seconds. It's still going to be very, very crumbly. That's okay. Take the blade out, mash some of it with your hands just to form big clumps, dump it out on your workstation, and then just knead it a little bit with your hands until it all comes together. And then wrap it up in some cling film and put it in the refrigerator and let it chill for a couple hours before you roll it out. Roll it out, put it in your, and that's enough. That recipe is enough, by the way, for a 2-crust pie. So if you're making a 1-crust pie like I did, cut the dough in half before you wrap it in cling film. Wrap up each half, and you can freeze one half for later, and you can then use the other one. So if you're making a 1-crust pie, roll your pie dough out on your workstation with a little bit of flour so it doesn't stick. Put it in your pie dish. Take some parchment paper, crumple it up, put it in the pie dish. Fill it with pie weights or beans or coins, whatever you have, so it keeps the pie crust down. And bake it in the oven at 375 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. Take it out, take the parchment paper and the beans out, put the crust back in for about 10 more minutes until it gets nicely golden brown like it is here. And what you might want to do for that second 10-minute bake is put some aluminum foil around the crust edge just to keep that from burning, because you're going to be baking it again once you make the custard. So let's move on to the pumpkin pie filling. And what you're going to do with the pumpkin pie filling is, here are your ingredients. You've got 1 cup of heavy cream, 1 cup of whole milk, 5 large eggs plus 2 large egg yolks, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 1 can of pumpkin, not pumpkin pie mix, just a can of organic pumpkin or whatever pumpkin you have, but just pumpkin. So that's 1 can of that, 1 cup of yams or sweet potatoes, whatever you can find, sweet potato puree, that works. 5 1/4 ounces of sugar, a 1/4 cup of maple syrup, 2 teaspoons of fresh ginger, and basically what you're going to do with your ginger is, fresh ginger comes in the store looking like this. You're going to peel it, and then with your microplane, just grate it, and you'll end up with grated ginger that looks like this. And you're going to use 2 teaspoons of the fresh grated ginger. 1 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, quarter teaspoon of nutmeg, and just for added flavoring, you can use anywhere from a teaspoon or a tablespoonful of bourbon. So let's get to work. Before we do, I just realized I need, what do I need? How many eggs? 5 large eggs and 2 large egg yolks. So I need 2 more eggs, which I'm going to get right now in my refrigerator. Okay, so a total of 7 eggs. Actually, wait a minute. That egg's broken. Give me a second. Okay. Got our eggs. So, first things first, we're going to whisk all the dairy together in a medium bowl. And I should say, my sister is filming me, and if people have questions, you can read them out to me if you want, but I'll just keep going. So, this is 1 cup of heavy cream and 1 cup of milk combined. So, we're going to pour this in. Five large eggs. Okay, so that's 5 large eggs. And now we're going to have 2 egg yolks. And I'm taking this cup out because I'm going to save the whites for another use. You can make meringues or all kinds of things with the whites. Okay, so that's 1 egg yolk. And I should say we've gotten a request from someone to go live. If any of you know me, you know I'm not tech savvy, so I have no idea what that means. If somebody wants to explain it, be happy to reevaluate that. Alright, so we've got our 5 eggs and 2 large egg yolks in there. Now I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. And this all gets whisked together. And I have to say, it took me a long time to come up with this pie recipe. I used to not be a big fan of pumpkin pie because I always found that the filling came out like corrugated rubber. But my dog's over there doing something. Buck! Anyway. So, but this filling I found comes out really creamy and smooth, and I think you'll like it. So that's all whisked together. Then we're going to put that to one side. Now we're going to move on to the pumpkin component. And this is really the trick, is you actually cook the pumpkin and sweet potato with sugar and the rest of the ingredients before you combine it with the custard and put it in the pie crust. And that just really adds a velvety smoothness to the custard. So we're going to add our can of pumpkin. To a medium saucepan. Alright, so that's our can of pumpkin. This is our cup of sweet potato. Five and a quarter ounces of sugar. Quarter cup of maple syrup. Two teaspoons of fresh ginger.
If you don't like ginger, then what?
Oh, and I should say, I mean, if you don't like ginger, you can leave the ginger out. It's totally up to you. Teaspoon of salt. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Quarter of a teaspoon of nutmeg. Now you can use, ground nutmeg. That's perfectly fine. I happen to have whole nutmeg, which looks like that, and I'm just going to grate this in. The recipe is a quarter of a teaspoon of nutmeg. I just do it by eye, but I also like nutmeg. So, and again, if you don't like nutmeg, you don't have to use it. If you don't like cinnamon, you don't have to use it. You can pretty much adjust the spices on this to your liking. All right, and then again, optional bourbon. I'm going to add a tablespoon, but it's really to taste, and you can definitely leave it out. All right, we're going to just whisk this together. Hey, Buck. Hi. Hi. What are you doing? Hi. He's a good boy. Alright, so I've mixed this all together, so it's all combined now. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring it over to the hob, and we're going to cook it on medium heat, stirring it constantly so it doesn't stick until it gets really shiny and glossy. And let's see. Yeah, so that's going to take a few minutes. So the reason you might want to go ask yourself why I'm making pumpkin pie, and the reason for that is I was watching a lot of Nigella Lawson's Christmas Kitchen yesterday on YouTube to get my mind off, you know, pandemic and stuff. And everyone was sort of getting into the holiday spirit in my house, so my family was like, hey, we bought a turkey breast. How about like a mini Thanksgiving dinner? And so that's what we're having tonight. We're having a turkey breast. I had some stale bread, which I cut up into cubes and toasted, and made some bread stuffing and some cream spinach, and we'll have some mashed potatoes, and we'll have some peas. So, and then we'll top it off with this pumpkin pie if all turns to right. So we're continuing to cook our pumpkin puree. And I should say, I would normally, if it's for Thanksgiving, I would serve it with some sweetened whipped cream, which is great with this. And that actually is a really easy recipe. That's just like a cup of heavy cream, quarter cup of powdered sugar or confectioner's sugar, teaspoon of vanilla, and 3 tablespoons of creme fraiche. And you put that in the bowl of a stand mixer, put it in the freezer for like about 5 minutes, let it get good and cold, and then whip all that together. And the creme fraiche actually stabilizes the whipped cream. It'll stay whipped for several hours longer than if you didn't put it in, and it also gives the whipped cream, I think, a really nice tang. So you can definitely use the sweetened whipped cream. But anyway, you can also serve the pie with the vanilla ice cream, which is perfectly acceptable too. That's delicious. I have an ice cream maker, and I kind of felt like making ice cream, so yesterday I made an eggnog ice cream with some nutmeg and vanilla and some bourbon, naturally. So we're going to have the eggnog ice cream with our pumpkin pie tonight. And I say we, my family is sheltering in place with me. I have my mom and my sister here, and my sister's operating the camera right now. And anyway, so as you can see, it's starting to bubble, which is good. So anyway, if you go to the Meals at Neil's website, I mean not the website, but the Instagram page, I have a lot of old videos posted of some recipes you can check out. Haven't posted in a while, only because I don't have a camera crew and all that at home, so just decided to, and it's hard, cooking and holding the camera at the same time. But there are some videos there if you want to see different things to cook. Try to keep it pretty simple. So while we're waiting for this to cook, I'll just quickly show you. This is the eggnog ice cream that I made to go with it. And I used a vanilla bean to get those vanilla flecks in there, and I think it's going to be very good. I can't quote you, well, I can quote you a little bit of the recipe for the ice cream if you have an ice cream maker and you want to try it. It's very simple. I mean, it's your basic vanilla ice cream recipe, but I just added enough nutmeg to taste and vanilla, and then about 3 tablespoons of bourbon. Unfortunately, I don't know the basic vanilla ice cream recipe by heart, but anything you look up online, it should get you there. And then if you have an ice cream maker, you just basically freeze it based on the manufacturer's instructions. And it really does taste like frozen eggnog. It's nice. So as you can see, it's starting to really bubble up, which is exactly what we want. And if it starts to splatter, just be careful because it's hot. We'll give it just a few more minutes, and then it'll be ready to go. Oh, and I should say the pie bakes at 375 degrees Fahrenheit. So you want to preheat your oven to that temperature, and have a rim baking sheet ready, just in case there's any drippage or spillage of the filling. I haven't had that experience, but you never know, so I would just bake it on a rim baking sheet just to be safe. Alright, well, this is definitely getting nice and shiny. Hey, Buck. Hey! Hey! That's my dog, Buck. Buck, down. Buck. Alright. I think that's shiny enough, and as you can see, well, actually, look at the ice cream back. But as you can see, it's really shiny and glossy now, and that's really going to help the finished product. So now, got our egg mixture here, and I'm just going to grab a fine mesh strainer. And what we're going to do is we're going to combine the pumpkin mixture and the egg mixture and then strain it through that sieve. And it smells great. It's almost like a pumpkin flavored eggnog. I haven't seen yet. Maybe we should try that. Alright, so there's all our milk in. And I'm just going to stir it for a minute. Just go around around with my spatula, make sure there are no bits stuck on the bottom. And now, we're going to strain it. And we're just going to let this strain through the strainer. And if you stir it, it helps. But basically, we're just trying to collect any big clumpy solids so that we have the smoothest possible custard. And I should say that this recipe I find makes more than enough for one pie filling. So if you have the leftover filling, don't throw it away. It makes a phenomenal bread pudding. You can just take some Dale challah or babka or any kind of egg bread. Croissants are really good with it, Dale croissants. Just break them up in a bowl, pour this custard on top, and bake it in the oven. I don't know, I'd say about 350 degrees for about 45 minutes until it's nice and puffed and golden, and it just makes the most delicious bread pudding. You can also use the filling for a pumpkin pot de creme, a creme brulee. There are a lot of uses for this, so don't be dismayed if you have a lot left over, because there's a lot you can do with it. It's funny to make pumpkin pie now because I normally would not make pumpkin pie any other time except Thanksgiving, but I don't know, something homey and comforting about pumpkin pie around now. So, I don't know, I think it's a good choice. Alright, so we've almost got the pumpkin sieved through. Okay. Now comes the fun part, where we fill it in the pie and bake it in the oven. So, got my rim baking sheet. Got my pie crust. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a measuring cup to actually fill the pie. And that's hopefully so we don't have any spillage. So just carefully pour that into your crust. Oh, and I should say, I'm using a 9-inch deep dish pie plate, but as you can see, I'm certainly going to have a lot of filling left over, so you could use a 9.5-inch deep dish plate, a 10-inch plate, and you'd probably have enough filling to fill that up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill my cup with some more filling, but I'm not going to fill it here. I'm going to put the pie in the oven and then pour a little bit more in. So, oven's on, got my mitt. Going to gently put the pie in the oven. Have my reserve filling. I'm going to pour a little bit more until it reaches the top. I think that's good. No. Dash more. Let's live a little. Now, just really gently slide the pie into the oven. And see, I even had some spillage. So I'm just going to quickly wipe that up so it doesn't burn. But this is why you want to use the rim baking sheet. Pie is in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to bake it at 375 degrees for 10 minutes. After the 10-minute mark, we're going to reduce it to 300 degrees, and we're going to bake it until the edges are set and puffed a little, and the center registers 175 degrees on an instant read thermometer. And that's going to be about 25 to 45 minutes longer. So just keep your eye on it when you reach that 25-minute mark after you've reduced the temperature to 300. So just again, in the oven right now at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, we're going to reduce it to 300 degrees. And we're going to bake it for 25 to 45 minutes longer, just until the edges are set and puffed. And the center registers 175 degrees on an instant read thermometer. And once it comes out of the oven, I'll post a picture. I'm not going to make you all sit here for an hour. I will post a picture of the finished pie on my Instagram page once it comes out. You're going to let it cool for, I would say, 2 to 3 hours before you serve it. And then, slice it up and serve it with, again, whipped cream, vanilla ice cream. Make some bourbon spiked eggnog ice cream, whatever you like. So,
Do you need a toothpick to put in it?
no, my sister's asking if you need a toothpick to put in the center. That doesn't really work. Actually, if the toothpick were to come out clean, you may have overcooked it because it's a custard pie, and the custard actually will continue to bake after you take it out of the oven. So I trust the thermometer for this. Again, once that, it may still look wet, but if the temperature reads 175 degrees, take it out. It will finish cooking as it cools, and it will gel together. I think that's it for now. Thank you all for tuning in, and everyone.